Riverside Park is one of those earlier parks that we had that's been around for a while, but it was initially 40 acres. Now it's grown to 95 acres. That includes about 30 acres that's leased from the DNR. And I'll show you a picture here in just a minute. We've got boat launch and picnic facilities and a range of activities there. So this was kind of the original park was right here, but when we added this a number of years later, and this part we're leasing from the state, because all this down below is Bass River, this whole area to the east, and this peninsula didn't really fit in they really didn't have access to it. So that's part of Riverside Park, and we've added some wonderful trails out here. So if you want to walk a really nice trail where you've got water on both sides of you, essentially, with the Grand River, and then the I guess that's called Max Lake within the old gravel pits themselves. That's a fun experience, and that's going to be the site of Ski and Smooch in February. So cross-country skiers, if there's snow, or hikers are going to have an opportunity for a romantic Valentine's Day type of event. I just want to say a few things about the Bass River Recreation Area, because to talk about the Grand River Greenway and not mention this would be an oversight. This is not a county run or anything, but it's state, and it's 1,655 acres, so it's a massive piece of land, over 3 miles of riverfront. This is the peninsula I was just pointing out to you, but their property is this whole area in here. As I've said, I go way back with the county, and when I first got here, there were plans to build a landfill at this site. Construction Aggregates owned it at that time, and it was pretty well mined out. I think there's probably still some gravel out there, but they had stopped their barge operations. They were barging gravel up to a terminal in Grand Haven, and it was all put on ships and used to build the whole waterfront at Chicago was built with this gravel, I'm told. But once they were done with their mining operations, it kind of sat there empty for quite a while, and they started to talk to Waste Management, and they actually had an agreement, and Waste Management started building landfill cells. They actually built some of the cells that were going to hold the garbage. And boy, there was a lot of outcry from people all over Ottawa County, particularly Robinson Township, if you can read the quote there from the supervisor. But people were really incensed with this idea of a landfill, a major landfill being built on the Grand River. So there was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of efforts to try to turn that around, and the county really stepped forward, and it's really through our county planning department, where they were doing solid waste planning at that time, essentially siting landfills, and they worked out a deal where Waste Management was allowed to build their Autumn Hills landfill down in Zealand Township in return for giving up their right to move forward with this site. And then the trick was how to get the state interested again, because they had been interested in the past. The state had really kind of outlined a plan to create a state park here, but then when all this landfill controversy arose, they backed away from it. Fortunately, we were able to get them back on board. And that's a pretty lousy image right there, isn't it? But basically, the state bought the first piece from Construction Aggregates, then a second piece from the Bacali family, and put in place this whole Bass River recreation area. And we really worked hard as a county parks agency to bring the state to the table on both of those deals. And it's pretty well undeveloped land right now, but it's probably, as the state gets more funding through all the different funding mechanisms they have going for them right now, we hope that they'll do some work out there. When Margie wrote the press release, she said I was going to give you some tips about neat places to go along the Grand River, and I'll try to remember to do that as we go. But one of my neat places, which is a pretty remote spot, this is the mouth of the Bass River right here. Like the whole gravel pit complex is here, and then there's a little inlet. But outside on the Grand River, the mouth of the Bass River is kind of hard to find, but it's right there. And if you have a kayak or a canoe and you paddle up there, that is just the most gorgeous, just expansive wetlands. You just feel like you're in the most remote place. First time I went up there was when with the drain commissioner, Steve Van Hoven, we paddled up there, and we were paddling up the river just to see what it looked like, and he commented, he said, look at the size of that red-tailed hawk. He said, isn't that gorgeous? And I said, oh, it's amazing. And I looked up at him. He was looking that way. I was looking this way. There were two different huge hawks sitting there perched overlooking the river, and it's just that kind of a place where it's very wild feeling and fun to explore. Burr Oak Landing, going upstream just a little bit further. This is a site where, so we're right here now. There's an east, there's a west and an east Burr Oak Landing, two different sites that are connected. But this is 261 acres of open space. And it's just we're going to add trails there hopefully next year, because it'll be a wonderful hiking place when we finally get trails built. There's currently 3 places where there are kiosks and little parking spots that you can access the property. It is open for some hunting, but it's just a really fun, beautiful site to go explore. And it has another one of these long, narrow bayous. This one historically is known as Rice Lake. But that's on the East Burr Oak property, and it's really fun to hike into that property, just kind of navigate in there, into the bayou. There's some high ground, you can kind of overlook the bayou. It's really a really interesting site, and so we're anxious to get trails built there so people will be more apt to explore it. The Eastmanville Farm used to be known as the Ottawa County Poor Farm or Community Haven. There's just a half a mile on the Grand River, which you see there in the lower part of the picture. But this is a site, 229 acres, that the County Board of Commissioners agreed to dedicate as part of the park system back in, I think it was 2004. And we were thrilled that they were willing to do that. It's not as high a quality natural land as some of our other parks are, but it is a really nice space and is a fun place to go visit. This was the barn that was part of the old poor farm that was actually functioning facility where they had 24 dairy cows, and the people that lived in this facility, in this institution, worked on the dairy farm and worked and did chores and helped raise some money to help pay for their upkeep there. There's just tons of great history that goes along with this property. Here's a site of the old structure that was there until I believe the 90s, early 90s, before the county tore it down. I've already introduced Margie, but Margie played another huge role in assisting the park system. She's a historian at heart, and it broke her heart to see us neglecting the cemetery that was on this property. There was this old cemetery that where a lot of the people that lived in this poor farm were buried, and it was, not being taken care of. So she rallied the troops and rallied us and raised a lot of money to see that area was restored. So there's a picture of it here. You can see the barn in the distance. It's on a little bluff out on the property. And there's a plaque now with the names of the people that are buried there. There's monuments in place. She found somebody to donate their work to do ground radar to locate where all the bodies were buried there, so we could actually mark the graves. And there was an interpretive sign that talks about some of the stories about the people that lived there, and it's really fun. So if you want to go for a nice little hike, drive out there, and there'll be a sign that'll lead you out to the cemetery, and you can check that out firsthand.